Hello, Transracial Adoption community. My name is Pugs. And as you might know, the Identity Transracial Adoptee Experiences website is intended to be a place where other transracial adoptees, not just myself, can share their stories and their experiences. It's to be a resource for anybody in the transracial adoption community to be able to come and learn more and hear more directly from transracial adoptees and the experiences that we go through. Specifically, it's to be a resource for other transracial adoptees who might be at different places in their identity formation journey, who might be having experiences that many of us might have already navigated. And so hopefully we can help them navigate the whole experience of growing up as a transracial adoptee. So along that line, I recently had a conversation with an incredible young woman by the name of Christina. And Christina reached out to me via the Transracial Adoption Perspectives Facebook group. And if you're not aware of that group, it's a fantastic resource for anybody in the transracial adoption story. Whether you're a birth parent, a transracial adoptee, an adoptive parent, a prospective adoptive parent, it's a fantastic resource all around. So I'll put a link to that Facebook group in the description of this video. Christina had reached out to me via this Facebook group and volunteered to be interviewed. She asked to be able to share her story. And so we had originally set up what was meant to be a quick 15-minute video chat that we would record and post up to the website. But of course, like so many great conversations, it actually turned into this long, almost hour-long conversation. And it was fantastic. I mean, Christina's experiences, her stories, her insights, and her perspective on transracial adoption and growing up as a transracial adoptee really resonated, and the conversation just flowed. So trying to edit that down to like 15 minutes or so didn't seem right. It didn't feel right. So what we've decided and what we've agreed is that we would break that conversation up, and we'll be posting it in sections. So what you're about to watch is the first section of that conversation. I do have to apologize up front that there were problems with the recording in terms of the video. So the video freezes and skips and freezes, but the audio is fine. And Christina's words, they are what's important. And like I said, this was a conversation. This wasn't a stiff, formal type of interview, question, answer format. It really did flow. So I truly hope that you enjoy and get as much out of the conversation with Christina as I did as I was having it with her. And so without any more from me, let's jump into Christina's interview. Let's jump into her conversation. So hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I really truly appreciate you being willing to take the time to talk and to actually tell pieces of your story on the blog site and everything. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So during our last conversation, we were talking a little bit about that sense of not being American, and how we sometimes have to choose the way that we project our identity when we're out in public, or sometimes how we have to protect our identity when we're out in public. So I was hoping that we could start there and maybe talk a little bit more about that whole experience of being perceived as not American.
It's inherently un-American, I feel like. There's something about me as a kid, and my race was never really mentioned. It was never something that was talked about, but even my earliest memories were it was always involved in conversations, especially when I first met kids, and nothing malicious, just as kids. Well, there were some things malicious, some mean kids would say, but typically, like first meeting kids, they would want questions answered and valid, but I didn't have the answers to give them. So I wouldn't really know how to answer the questions. I remember one of my neighbors asking why I have purple right here. And I didn't know why. Like, I don't know why it's a little bit more purple there. It's darker. It's because of the pigment on my skin. So she would always, as a kid, kids would think that I would put eyeliner there, and it's just the color of my, it's just how it is. Questions that, I mean, and sometimes inappropriate questions when I was a teenager. There were definitely myths about, and I'm multiracial, so I'm Asian, Native American, and European ancestry. But most people in this area, when they look at me, they see me as like 100% Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. Those seem to be the only countries out of the 48 countries in Asia that they know about. Yeah, but there were myths about Asian women. I don't know. Have you ever heard anything?
I've heard some fairly vulgar ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
So guys would ask me things like that were, and I'm like, I've never even heard of that. I don't know. Take an anatomy class. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. That's just. I mean, that's so many things past just the basic implicit racial bias. It's also misogyny. You know, I mean, it's toxic masculinity.
Right.
I mean, it's so many other things, and when we talk about transracial adoption and being a transracial adoptee and our experiences with it, there's the intersectionality of so many other things, especially for you as a woman of color.
Right. Yeah, so navigating that has been interesting as a kid, and I didn't really have the responses because I was being raised with a colorblind perspective. So when your approach is to just ignore race, how do you navigate situations in which race comes up?
Right. So, so that brings up another thing that you that we talked about a little bit in our previous conversations in terms of how you were raised in that colorblind type of mentality, and that you mentioned about how your parents would say that they don't see race. So, like,
Right.
how is that affected your self identity and how you actually see yourself and navigate the world in the body that you have?
So I think first I had to really understand why well, it made me feel insignificant and not seen. Like that was the outcome, and not heard. And my experience wasn't validated. Nor did I have anyone to watch to see how they navigated their issues of race, or and I didn't see anything on TV except for, and I told you my role models, the people that I saw were Dragon Ladies, Kung Fu movies. They were Long Duck Dong. They were the guy from Breakfast at Tiffany's. Like that's who I saw that kind of looked similar to me. Oh, Wayne's World. There was the one chick, but she was completely sexualized. So
yeah, Asian women so often are sexualized. It's that misogyny again.
Right. So for me, understanding my mom came from the South, and the colorblind perspective came out of the civil rights movement, and I think they had all the good intentions in the world, but it doesn't matter if we don't live in a post-racial society. If you don't live in a post-racial society, you're setting kids up for failure, because our job as parents is to raise them to be prepared for their world. So by not knowing how to navigate racial incidents, I really struggle. And I still I'm never surprised, but I'm always left without words. I'm not quick with my words, so But it happens all the time. There's just little things. When last time we were in my hometown, me and my partner went out for a drink, and you know what? Like, I know people are trying to make people of color, and he's black, feel comfortable. It's overwhelmingly white here. So some guy said, "What up, brother?" and like gave him a hug, and he was white. And then another guy, a white man, high-fived him and said, "My wife is Peruvian too."
Oh, good
So
Lord.
he bought us a drink, and my partner gave him five, and I'm like, "You are such a seller." I'm like, "You are such a whore." I'm like, "You're the worst." So
Wow.
yeah, drinks. I'm like, and on the way out of there, some guy grabbed me by the arm and started speaking Spanish, which I don't speak. I would love to learn how to speak Spanish, but it is not my native language, nor do I have any ancestry from. But
It's amazing the assumptions that people make.
whatever place geography I'm in, the brown people in that area, I'm typically just kind of like tossed in, even if I look like them or not. So when I'm in Florida, it's assumed that I'm Mexican or from South or Central America. So last time I was running with headphones in and a jogging suit on that like matched. I was running, I was exercising, and a lady grabbed me by the arm again, and I don't know why people think they can touch me. And she asked me to go clean room 148.
Oh, you know.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. And so it's just, but it's funny because in that same trip, so the guys, me and my mother were walking in somewhere. My adopted mother's white, and they held the door for me, but they wouldn't hold it for my mother. But that's because the people that were holding the door were my color skin, I think, and probably looked at me and not my mother that way. I don't know.
that's wow.
One of the first times I remember I was cashing some guy out. I worked at Bickford's, which is like a breakfast place. And the computer froze, cashed the man out, and he was wearing a veteran's hat. And he looked at me and he said, "Young lady, if you want to stay in this country, you had better learn our numerical system." I only, like, you can clearly tell this is my first language, and it's my only language. Like, is he implying that I don't know. So things like that.
So when you were growing up, and you brought these types of experiences, because I'm assuming that as a kid,
Yeah.
you faced a lot of these similar types of things. When you brought them home, I mean, what? How did your parents react? How did they deal with it? How did they help you deal with it?
I didn't bring him home because when I was younger, I could tell that it made my mom very uncomfortable. I could tell that it made them uncomfortable. My intention was not to make anyone uncomfortable. It was always in the back of my head that I could still, like, this wasn't a permanent place. I could still be put back in foster care. So I did not want to hurt anyone or make anyone uncomfortable. But I remember like feeling that very early on, that this is not a topic that should, like, it's a taboo topic.
So I didn't have the same fear of being put back into foster care that you did, but I, I mean, I actually count it as unintended microaggressions. Like when I would bring home that I had been called a chink, or that I'd gotten in another fight, and, well, Danny, why'd you get in a fight? Well, because he called me a gook, or because he called me, um, my mom her response to it was sort of the colorblind perspective that your parents had, but she would say things like, "Well, you have to consider the source, and you just have to be better than that." And
Yeah.
she wouldn't acknowledge. It was almost as if she was trying to brush off this
Right.
experience that I had and not address the core of it.
Yeah. He
And
was just sad. He was just like, you had to, yeah.
yeah, he was having a bad day, or he shouldn't have said that, but your reaction was, instead of validating that, no, that actually was that actually was a hurtful moment of racial violence,
Yeah.
instead of acknowledging that, just kind of brushing it off as if it was just another experience that kids have,
Right.
when other kids were not having this experience, and my white siblings were not having these experiences. And so in a sense, it really is, it's two things. It's a little microaggression. Your racial experience doesn't matter, period. But it's also kind of a form of gaslighting. Why are you so upset about this? Why are you so upset? You shouldn't be upset. That wasn't that bad. That didn't happen the way you thought it was. They didn't mean that, etc., etc., etc. And again, it's brushing off our experiences and making us feel like there's something wrong with us, that we had that reaction, that we were hurt.
And that's a form of trauma. And when trauma, and I think I mentioned before, when trauma happens and it's not addressed by caretakers, that not being addressed appropriately is almost more impactful than the trauma itself. And you're more likely to experience that trauma over and over again, and you don't learn how to respond to it effectively.
You're absolutely right. I mean, because that, and in terms of trying to formulate your personal sense of self and your personal sense of identity, and you're starting from a place where you're thinking that I am wrong. I am wrong to feel this way. I am wrong to react to it this way. When you're starting from a place of I am wrong in terms of your self-identity, that's a horrible place to be. To constantly be feeling like there's something wrong with you and not wrong with the people, who are hurting you, but there's something wrong with you for being hurt.
And it's very difficult. I constantly question myself too, because it's very difficult when everyone around you sees something different than you and can't see what you're seeing. And when you're all alone, maybe they are right. Maybe it's you. So to stand alone, especially as a kid, like I couldn't as a kid, because I wanted to have connection desperately. Like I wanted to have friends. So in order to have friends, I had to accept all of the microaggressions, prejudice, and racism. I had to, or else I would be standing completely alone.
That's a hard thing. I mean, that is a really hard thing to know, that in order to remain friends with this group of white people, I have to take their bias, because if I push back against it, they won't want to be friends with me anymore. If I call them racist, they won't want to be friends with me anymore. And as a child, when you're trying to find peer groups and social groups and you're trying just to belong, I mean, it's hard because you end up absorbing all of that crap.
And I have 3 friends that I've been friends with for a very long time who have taken the time to acknowledge it. I have one friend who took the time because she couldn't understand why I had such a complex time with multiracial identity, and why it was so difficult with me, and how it made things more complicated as a transracial adoptee. So she was the first person that got a book and read a book ever, and it meant so much to me, like in my life ever. This was only like 4 years ago.
She actually educated herself instead of relying on you to educate her.
Yeah. So she brought it to me, and she's like, I understand now. But it meant so much to me.
Yeah.
Like that's the first person in my life. Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know that I've ever had that experience except for my wife. I truly, I'm constantly explaining to other people.
And I don't think people realize the time, the energy, and I frankly don't have to. No. But it's demanded. It's expected. And then I'm spoken over typically. People just, but no, I want you to see it my way. Well, then why am I talking to you? You don't want
Yeah, that's always lovely when they ask a question and then they talk over the answer.
And I refuse to argue my experience. I refuse. This is how I experience things. Like this is it's not up for debate.
That reminds me of a story that I'd also posted on the website, in which, a friend of mine, a work friend, but a friend of mine, like, had asked me if I ever wanted to find my real family. And it's, and first of all, it's like, how's that your business?
Is this like a close friend or just an acquaintance?
It's a work friend,
Oh,
somebody that I'm close to at work, but not.
like that.
And yes, we have been over to her house for supper with her and her husband once or twice. Um, but that's it. This isn't like a close, intimate.
Yeah.
And plus this was at work. This was at lunch at work. And so first of all, it's like, how's that even any of your business? And second of all, um,
Okay.
the word real,
Yeah.
that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
That's kind of shitty to throw out there like that.
I think I always say to me, being called mom, dad, grandmother, grandfather, sister, brother is a privilege that you earn. It's not having to do with who gave birth to you. So, in my belief, and they feel like many adoptees have a much broader understanding of what family is.
So that was section one of the conversation with Christina. Hopefully, I'll be able to get the next couple of sections edited down and posted up pretty quickly. I have some time off for the holidays from work, so I should be able to plow through them pretty fast and get those posted up for you. But even if you only watch this first section, I hope that there's something that resonated with you and that you can take away and incorporate into your own life, or at least incorporate some understanding of the transracial adoption experience from the adoptee's perspective. Especially if you're a transracial adoptee, I hope that there were parts that resonated with you that maybe can help you feel not so alone in the experience of growing up as a transracial adoptee. I know that there were parts that resonated with me. So hopefully there are parts that all of you are taking away with you.